Welcome to my new video. You can listen to a horror story adjusted for foreigners to learn Croatian, and then there comes a past tense tutorial. How to form the past and how to use it in the sentence. I've set a content navigation so you can skip the sections if you want, so check the description. Okay, then let's start. Kad sam bila dijete, često sam išla u posjet k djedu na selo. Najviše sam voljela ići tamo kad je bila zima i padao je snijeg. Gledala sam bijele planine kroz prozor. U kući je uvijek bilo toplo. Jedne večeri, djed i ja smo sjeli pored vatre i on je počeo pričati. Rekao mi je da je to istinita priča. To se dogodilo njemu kad je imao 20 godina. Bila je subota. Bio sam u gradu s prijateljima. Grad je bio udaljen 20 kilometara od sela. Bila je ponoć i morali smo ići kući. Jedan od mojih prijatelja, zvao se Marko, imao je auto. On me je odvezao do mojeg sela, a dalje sam morao ići pješice kroz šumu. Hodao sam polako, korak po korak. Mislio sam, nema žurbe. Oko mene bila je tišina. Kad sam došao na pola puta, čuo sam glazbu u daljini. Lijepa glazba. Kad sam izašao iz šume, vidio sam jednu staru kuću odakle je dolazila ta glazba. Međutim, u kući je bio mrak. Bio sam znatiželjan, pa sam krenuo prema kući. Želio sam znati tko živi tu. Ali glazba je odjednom prestala. Iznenadio sam se. Vrata su bila otvorena. Ušao sam u kuću. Na nebu je bio pun mjesec, pa sam mogao vidjeti što je u kući. Nije bilo ničega i nikoga. Samo je neki stari klavir bio u sredini velike sobe. Odjednom sam osjetio hladan vjetar, iako je bilo ljeto. Čuo sam ženski glas. Želiš li da sviram? Okrenuo sam se, ali iza mene nije bilo nikoga. Pitao sam glasno, tko je to? Gdje si? Tišina. Nije bilo odgovora. Pomislio sam, ovo je neka šala. Idem kući. ali tada sam je vidio. Djevojka duge crne kose u bijeloj haljini izašla je iz kuće. Slijedio sam je. Izašao sam iz kuće i ja, ali djevojke nije bilo nigdje. Krenuo sam doma jer, priznajem, bilo me je strah. Bojao sam se. Odjednom sam opet čuo glazbu. Brzo sam se okrenuo i vidio djevojku. Stajala je na prozoru i gledala me. Shvatio sam da ona nije živo biće. Trčao sam brzo kući, doma. Kad sam stigao kući, moji roditelji, sestra i brat su već spavali. Otišao sam na spavanje i ja. Te noći sanjao sam da sviram klavir, iako ja nikad nisam svirao klavir. Dakle, svirao sam klavir u snu. Odjednom se pojavila neka mala djevojčica i rekla: Mama, on svira moj klavir. Mama je odgovorila: Ti si svirala jučer, Laura. Tada sam se probudio. Bilo je jutro. Moja obitelj je doručkovala. Došao sam u kuhinju i mama me pitala: Što je ovo? Našla sam to na stolu. Uzeo sam to i pogledao. To je bila tipka klavira. Odgovorio sam: Ne znam. I stavio tipku u džep. Sljedeće noći opet sam sanjao klavir, djevojčicu, glazbu, smijeh. Tjedan dana imao sam noćne more. Svaki put kad mi je neki glas rekao: Vrati mi moj klavir, ja sam se probudio. Tada sam se sjetio tipke. I sljedeće jutro otišao sam u tu kuću. Izvadio sam tipku iz džepa i stavio sam ju na klavir. Prošli put nisam vidio u mraku, ali sada sam vidio. Stara knjiga o sviranju bila je na klaviru. Otvorio sam knjigu. Na prvoj stranici pisalo je: Mojoj dragoj Lauri za 8. rođendan. How to form the past tense. The past consists of two parts. First, the present of the verb to be, in Croatian biti. You make the second part by removing the suffix t from the infinitive and adding the suffix o for masculine, la for feminine, and o for neutral. For example, the story began with: Kad sam bila dijete, često sam išla u posjet djedu. Here the verbs in the past are sam bila and sam išla. In the example sam bila, the infinitive sounds biti. Remove t and add la for feminine, o for masculine, and lo for neutral. What does masculine, feminine, and neutral mean? It means subject. You'll use suffix of a certain gender depending on the subject in the sentence. For example, a girl began with the story, so she said about herself, sam bila, kad sam bila dijete. When the grandpa began with his story, he said, bio sam u gradu s prijateljima. The same is with other grammatical persons. When you talk with a person, you'll use a form depending on the gender of that person. If you talk with a woman, you'll say, for example, išla si u posjet. You see, this is second person singular. And feminine gender, so išla si. When you talk about someone, you'll also use o or la depending on the gender of the person you're talking about. If you talk about the child, but only if you're using the word child, you'll say dijete je išlo, u posjet dijete je bilo, and so on. If you talk as a voice of a group and you want to say we were, then you say mi smo bili. But you'll say it if in your group there are only men, including you too, or men and women mixed. But if only women are in the group, including you too, you'll say bile smo. It's the same with other persons in plural. Vi ste bili, vi ste bile, oni su bili, one su bile. What's with the infinitives on chi, like doći, ući? They have irregular second part of the past. There's no rule, but you have to simply learn how their second parts sound. Infinitive doći, for example, past is došao, došla, došlo, došli. Ući is ušao, ušla, ušlo, ušli, and so on. There are also some exceptions among the verbs on t, like masculine of vidjeti. Vidjeti is to see. Masculine of vidjeti is video, but other genders and plural are irregular in that example. How to use the past in the sentence. The sentence structure in Croatian is actually pretty flexible, which means that you can put past in any place and you can insert words between two parts of the past. Let's see the examples. In the first example, the subject is in the first place. On je počeo pričati. On is subject. When the subject is in the beginning, like this, the past comes second, and it comes in a version where the first part is in the first place and the second part is in the second place. But if you remove the subject, which is possible, if it's obvious who you're talking about, you know that pronouns in Croatia are not necessary, but only when you want to highlight something. So if we remove the pronoun, which is subject in the sentence, we'll get je počeo pričati. And it's incorrect. Only this version is incorrect. So only incorrect is when the first part of the past comes in the first place in the sentence. What to do then? Just switch the parts and you'll get a pretty correct version of the sentence. Počeo je pričati. Example 3 is when you have adverbs like odjednom, suddenly. Odjednom sam čuo glazbu. Now you don't have the subject mentioned. The subject is the pronoun ja, which means I, but it's removed because it's not necessary, since we know from the first part sam that it's about first person singular. So in this example we have adverb in the first place. When something is in the first place in the sentence, past must come second, but not in reverse, but first part first and second part second. Example 4, when you use pronouns like me, her, him, then pronouns come between two past parts. It's the same with pronouns like object in the sentence. For example, vidio sam djevojku. Here we use noun as object and it comes after the past. Okay, but if you change this noun for a pronoun, it comes at the same place. But if you mention the subject, in this example it's I, ja, then the structure of past changes. Ja sam vidio ju. And this is incorrect. For native speaker, it sounds really unnatural, so you need to place the pronoun between the past parts. Ja sam ju vidio. It's the same with verbs that include the pronoun se. The structure is the same. Ja sam se okrenuo. The pronoun is between the parts. But if you don't use the subject, the pronoun is behind the past. Okrenuo sam se. And in example 5, I just want to show you that you don't have to use both parts of the past if they're repeating. For example, here we have sam se okrenuo, first past, and then it comes vidio, the second part of the past sam vidio. So you can say brzo sam se okrenuo I vidio sam djevojku, but it's not necessary. It sounds even better if you don't use sam twice here. In the next sentence, you can notice that the second part, je, is missing in the second half of the sentence. So you can say I gledala me je, but as the past is repeating, it's enough to use the full version only once. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful for you. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you. See you in the next video.